Hey guys, I'm Nolan Sanborn. I'm a local industrial real estate investor here in Birmingham, Alabama, and we are on our way right now driving to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. It's about an hour west of Birmingham, and wanted to bring you along today of what it looks like, kind of the underwriting aspects. We're going to walk this property. We're going to get our eyes on it. I'm going to walk you through how this even hit my inbox, why I'm deciding to drive an hour west. And, a lot of people when they're first getting into real estate, maybe you're like me, you read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, someone recommends that book. Maybe you're not a reader, but you read it or you listen to it, and it changes your perspective on the world. At least it did for me, where I started to think, I'm from like Kokomo, Indiana. It's like a little town north of Indianapolis, and it's like just blue collar USA, and nothing wrong with it, but I kind of joke with my wife, like that's where, it feels like dreams go to die a little bit. And I read this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, while I was playing professional baseball, and it changed my perspective on reality. Before, I've been busy focusing on just working hard, grinding, and going after it. And Robert Kiyosaki in his book basically taught me from 30,000 feet that instead of working for money, find a way to have money work for you. Passive income, right? So then you start dancing around the internet, looking up passive income. And then one of the top 5 sites that pops up is Bigger Pockets. At least that's what it was for me. And so I started to dance around these forums. I'd be on the forums at midnight trying to find ways to buy property. I'd be buying all my dad's buddies, lunches and coffees, trying to figure out ways to, buy property, buy real estate, own units, own doors, right? That's what they say. And so I basically started maybe just like you. I bought a property from one of my dad's buddies, kind of on a handshake deal. I borrowed money from local Community First Bank on a handshake deal because I was a minor league nobody. I was making 0 income in the minors. So it was kind of like a handshake, good luck kid kind of deals. And that was kind of the beginning of my investing career. I started to just buy single family houses up in Indiana because that's where I'm from. In the off season, I'd go there and I'd spend all my time working with property managers. My mentor, Nick Pate, who's an insurance agent with State Farm up there, he's taught me so much about investing. And I essentially started to buy more property. I started to get, creative. I learned more about subject twos. I started to buy with creative, owner financing terms, things like that. And I eventually got to a point where I bought a 22 unit apartment building with no money. I basically bought the property with bank debt at like 80% loan to value, and then I had the seller leave 20% or the down payment. He financed me the down payment and left money in the deal. So I was in this $1.1 million apartment building with like no money, which was cool. Cash flow wasn't great. It was bringing in like $3,100 a month in net cash flow, but I was in the deal for no money. So I looked at it as an infinite return. So that was kind of what got my gears going as like creative ways to buy real estate, buy property. So to fast forward to 2019, I read a book called Commercial Real Estate Investing, A Creative Way to Make Money by a guy named Dolph De Roos. You can check him out. He's a guy from New Zealand. And I had read another couple of books by him. One's called Real Estate Riches, and you can check that one out too. But the whole point of it is he just makes this really great comparison. Number one, in Real Estate Riches, talking about what's the difference between real estate and the stocks or gold or mutual funds or really any other investment that's out there. He just does pros and cons and compares them. And so after I read that book, I was like, okay, I know that I'm doing something right by not having a dime in the stock market, not having a dime in a 401k or any of these retirement accounts that Uncle Sam controls, having all of my money in my investments in real estate. So I knew I was doing something right. And then I took it a step further and read this commercial real estate investing book, and it completely made me do a 180 on the type of real estate that I was buying. So again, before, my focus, like what they said on Bigger Pockets, is, hey, let's go buy more real estate. Let's go buy more doors. The more doors that you have, the more passive and the more financial freedom you have. Because again, I had at one point, I started out with like 3 properties, and I'm bringing in, $2,100 in rent, you service debt, you pay your expenses out, I might be bringing in like, $800 in cash flow on that property, maybe a little bit less. And it's cool out of the gate because you're getting this check. I mean, I remember when I got my first rent check from my tenant, and I was maybe 24 years old, and I was actually down at the beach with my now wife, and I remember my tenant calling me and said, "Hey, Nolan, just want to let you know that I just deposited rent into your account for the month." And I was like, I felt like I was a caveman discovering fire. I was like, there's no way this is this easy, this passive income thing. And so I was like, okay, this is great. And then of course, 3 months later, after I've collected this passive income, an AC goes out, and then you're banged $8,800 or whatever it was. So it's not as passive as they tell you. But what the Bigger Pockets forums say is, instead of you focusing on, or you buy 3 properties, just go buy like 6 more. Go buy like 6 more properties. Find a way to get like more properties. And when you do that, what's going to happen is it's going to create more passive income, because if something goes sideways, or an AC goes out, or a tenant leaves, well, then you've got 7 or 8 other properties that are still cash flowing, and it's going to be able to have some buoyancy. You're going to be able to have more consistency and like level that out. So that's what I did. I went and bought another couple houses. I bought a duplex, what they tell you. I didn't do any house hacking. I was living with my parents. And so after I got to like 8 or 9 houses, that's when they say on the Bigger Pockets forums, well, now it's the time to go and hire a property manager. Because when you do that, because you've been busy working in your business, right? You're managing these tenants, you're doing all the accounting, you're going back and forth. And you can't go and expand your business when you're working you can't expand on your business if you're working in your business. So after I got to like 10 houses, I hired a property manager, and then it allowed me to spend my time buying more deals. So then I got up to like 18 or 20 houses. And again, doing creative stuff. I'm not any different than you. It's just buying property creatively, seller financing, bank debt, that kind of thing. And I got to this point where there was a lot of passive income. I was bringing in $6,500, $80,000 a month of net passive income. And I'm like, damn, this is really cool. This is awesome. How do you scale this? How do you level this up to like what all these guys are doing online? And so we got more creative. But that's when I bought this apartment. This is when I did this next thing. And the problem that I discovered that maybe you have also experienced is my property manager, who at the time was a great friend. I mean, we've since parted ways, but I discovered that when I'm reconciling my books for the month, there was like a few $100 that I couldn't reconcile. There was always like a loss somewhere in the weeds, like we're rehabbing 123 Main or 876 Weaver, right? And there's a discrepancy in the accounting. And out of the gate, I thought maybe because I was like 26, 27, I thought maybe I just wasn't a very good accountant, right? I went to public school, right? So I'm not an expert. But I started to discover this pattern that there was consistently $400 to $500 that was just not showing up in the ACH. And so inevitably, unfortunately, I discovered that my property manager was swiping a couple bucks off the top every month, because I don't know if it was like an ego thing or a jealousy thing or not, but I got up to like 55 of these houses, and he was a little bit older than I was, and he was getting 10%. I don't know what the sitch was, but basically he was taking money, he was stealing from me. And when I discovered that idea that he was taking money from me, it changed my entire, number one, I didn't trust him or really any property manager moving forward. But second of all, I just don't have this desire to own something from far away where I can't get my eyes on it within an hour, So to fast forward, or I guess to rewind to what I was mentioning earlier about reading this book, Commercial Real Estate Investing. As I was reading this book, again, I had discovered that real estate was the right investment. I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And after that, though, and I discovered commercial, the problem that I was facing before was maybe, number one, being naive and not realizing that there's other ways to buy property, or commercial property. But I think that I had a little bit of timidness, and I was afraid because I heard metrics and ratios and understanding rates and returns that I didn't know, because I was thinking small in Kokomo, Indiana about single family homes, because that's what I was learning online, and that's what my mentor was telling me at the time, was to just go buy more houses, right? Because that's what they kept saying. But as I was studying this, I was like discovering so to go back, Dolph basically in the first book, Real Estate Riches, he distinguishes why real estate is better than any other investment: gold, stocks, equities, whatever. Then in commercial real estate investing, he distinguishes the difference between residential and commercial, and why commercial is basically king. And so as I was reading through this book, it was and one of the best parts about Dolph, and I don't know him personally, but he's had a really a big impact on my life, is he's not telling me what to do. None of his books or anything, they don't tell you right, wrong, indifferent, up or down. It's just, here are the facts, here's the differences. Now you decide and you take the action to which direction that you want to go. And so as I was reading this, I started to create this new real estate identity, if that's what you want to call it, where every time I was looking at a property, because here's really the main differences. In commercial real estate, let me just explain the biggest factor as to why you can actually scale commercial real estate versus residential. When you go and borrow money on a residential property, let's say you buy a $100,000 house and you go borrow 75% of that, so $75,000. The bank, when they underwrite that deal, yeah, they're going to look at the comps in the area, they're going to get an appraisal on the property, all that stuff. But when they go and look at the actual intrinsic value or the strength of that debt, they're looking at the borrower. The borrower is the most important metric in that entire equation, because at the end of the day, if you have a Red Lobster waiter as your tenant and they go sideways or whatever, sure, you're going to have the ability to sell, but it's your income and it's your debt to income ratio that will allow you to service that debt on that house. So on the other side of the coin, in commercial real estate, it's actually the tenant and their balance sheet and their ability to pay rent to the borrower and the borrower's ability to service debt. That's the main difference, is actually in the strength of the debt. With commercial real estate is focused specifically on the tenant and the lease and the strength of that tenant's balance sheet. So that's basically what I discovered too, is that's what holds a lot of people up, or what gives a lot of people in residential a ceiling. Is, you probably have heard it before on the forums, is that bigger pockets or a bank will really only allow you to buy about 10 houses before you got to go borrow from another bank. Because what's going to end up happening is, if you have, let's say, $3 million in real estate of residential property, you have to have a certain amount of income from your W-2 or 1099 in order to go borrow, because of your debt to income ratio. So the more that you buy, if you're not buying creatively, you're just doing traditional financing, the more that you buy, the more you have to earn from your W-2 or 1099. Where on the other hand, with commercial, there essentially is not a cap. There's not a cap as to how much money you can borrow, because the bank's not necessarily looking at you. Yeah, you might have to guarantee some debt, but at the end of the day, as long as you have a strong tenant and their ability to service or to pay rent, you're, as the borrower, really never on the hook, because the strength of the debt is the tenant. So that's one thing that I thought was a major league piece for me, because at the time I didn't have a whole lot of income, right? I was a professional baseball player, wannabe. Now I'm washed up nobody. Now I'm just parenting as a hobby. But after I discovered that was a big indicator, like, hey, this might be an opportunity to make a move in a different direction. But then also too, there's opportunities where every deal probably has an extra zero on it. I mean, if you're like me, I was trying to find the cheapest house in the best neighborhood, right? And it's all about the comps in the area. That's the difference. Is residential real estate, if you have 10 houses in a cul-de-sac and they're all going for $200,000, well, that 11th house, whether it's got a pool, maybe a bigger backyard, or maybe a nicer kitchen, you might be able to add an extra like 10 grand onto that. The value of residential real estate is determined by the comps in the area, or the comparable sales. Well, in commercial real estate, the value of the real estate actually is intrinsically valued by how much cash flow that the property produces. So let me give you an example. If you buy a building that has a net operating income of $100,000 and you have a market cap rate, let's just say of 10%. And a cap rate is just the rate in which you capitalize the rental income, okay? So a 10%, when I say cap rate, I'm just talking about a rate of return essentially on cash. So if you have a 10% cap rate and $100,000 of net operating income, the way you derive the actual intrinsic value of that property is taking the net operating income and you divide it by the market cap rate. So $100,000 divided by 0.1 is going to equal $1 million. That's the value of that property. Regarding the bank size, that's how the property is going to appraise. It doesn't matter what the comps are in the area, it matters about the cash flow. So if you think about it this way, if you're able to buy a property, let's say that there's 20,000 square feet and you've got 10,000 feet that are currently rented and you're bringing in $100,000 and you as the investor go and buy it for $1 million, and then you take the other side and you lease it up for another $100,000, you've just created a 100. So, but now you have $200,000 of total net operating income. Well, the market cap rate hasn't changed. So now you take $200,000 divided by the market cap rate. So you just increased the value of that real estate, the intrinsic value, from $1 million to $2 million just by using your creativity to lease the space out. So that was another massive indicator that, hey, I might need to make a decision and move to commercial because it allows your creativity to truly create massive equity and wealth. And then I think another thing that I discovered too is my relationship with my tenant is completely night and day than what it was with my residential tenants. Before, if I had a Red Lobster waiter tenant or even a contractor, that relationship was me, I'm the greedy landlord, I'm the mustache guy from Monopoly, I'm the bad guy, I'm out to get you. Well, again, in commercial real estate, because your tenants are steel fabricators, they're glass supply guys, they're distribution guys, they're roofing businesses, those types of entities, well, those guys have an obligation to treat your property nicely, number one, because that's where they have their business, that's where they earn income, and their customers and their clients go to their place of business. They want it to be nice, so they have an obligation, really, an incentive to treat your property nicely and to upkeep it. But the relationship is different because it's my job as a landlord to provide them a watertight space, and then that allows them to go and work and earn a living for their family. So it's a great relationship, and it's an actual win-win for both parties. I provide a great space for them. They, as the tenant, they don't really want to be in the real estate business. They want to be in their steel fabrication business. And we're able to be on the same team and get together to the same goal of creating more efficiencies in our business and in our leases. And most importantly too, they never call me. They handle everything. The leases are triple net, meaning that the tenant is responsible for all the outgoings. They pay the taxes, they pay the insurance, they pay the maintenance, or they maintain the property. And the leases are like usually 5+ years long versus a month-to-month or even a year lease with residential. So there's a bunch of indicators and those are just a few of them. There's a bunch of indicators as to why commercial real estate is night and day so much better than residential. And so after I discovered all this and I read this book and I started to study commercial and industrial real estate, I decided that if not now, then when? If not me, then who? I asked myself those questions. And so I could sit there and continue to think, oh, I need to buy more units. I need to continue to ask my mentor up in Indiana what I should do. Or I can freaking make the decision to go for it and do it myself. And so that's what I did. I sold every single one of my units up in Indiana, and I completely switched my focus specifically to industrial and commercial real estate. And that's kind of where we are today, where we've got over 201,000 square feet of triple net lease industrial commercial real estate. And that's kind of how we are right now. We're driving again to Tuscaloosa to go look at another industrial property. So let me give you the quick 30,000 foot view of this, and then we'll walk the property. You'll get a chance to get your eyes on it. But I got this property from one of my brokers. I personally do not spend any of my own time on LoopNet or Crexi or any of those online platforms to find property, because I've discovered that it's a waste of my time. There's other brokers that are out there that are pounding the pavement, pounding the phones, making the phone calls, doing their own homework, because that's how they get paid. They get paid a commission when a deal closes. So what I've been focused on is assembling my team and having the people on my team do the things that they're experts at. I'm not an expert at finding deals, but I am an expert at raising capital with investors and having a relationship with bankers to fund deals. That's how I spend the majority of my time now. And I mix in a little bit of racquetball here and there too. So what I'm doing is I do not spend any time on finding property. I have my broker send me, first I send them a very specific, laser focused description of what I'm looking for. 10 to 25,000 feet, 16 to 18 foot ceiling heights, less than a mile off the highway, 2 to 3 roll up doors, and maybe a few other things depending upon the cap rates and the market per square foot and things like that. But roughly though, I do not look at anything unless it hits those criteria. And then when it hits my inbox, then I know it's a, hey, opportunity here. The light goes off that there's something I need to consider and look at this. So that's where we're here right now. Is my real estate agent Haynes Waldo over in Tuscaloosa sent this to me about 2 weeks ago, and we've been going back and forth. I asked for the lease. I got my eyes on it. It's not the perfect opportunity right now on paper, but I don't want to say that I can't do this deal, because sometimes when there are some discrepancies or a seller is off market, most of the time that just means a seller either is uneducated on the value of his real estate, or he's going to have one of the 3 trilogies or the components of a great deal. There's 3 of them. Number 1, you got to have a timeline. You got to have something wrong with the property, and you got to have motivation, okay? So in this case, maybe the seller is getting divorced, somebody died, there's a situation in a family trust where they got to go sideways and sell, there's some motivation. So we're going to discover all that today, and I think you're going to get a chance to follow along, and we'll walk this property and kind of just see what the steps are as to how I'm thinking about this property. I'm gonna walk you through on the way back. We'll decompress on the deal. I'm gonna walk through the steps and what I thought. We'll get Haynes' opinion of the property as well. But I think for somebody that has interest in commercial real estate, this is going to be really valuable, because you're going to get a chance to see what an actual property looks like, what the actual steps of the deal, what it takes, the conversations, the dialogue with the seller, the dialogue with the broker. Because that's what a lot of people are missing in real estate. They hear, again, what they talk about on the forums, or you buy some massive course that doesn't tell you to do anything. It just says, watch this video. I'm going to walk you through the steps of what this looks like to be actually on the ground in this particular deal. And let's see if we can do it. I guess you can follow along. And I guess what we'll do is, as we're walking this property, I'll give you the information and the way that I'm thinking about it, and then we'll decompress it on the way back. See you then. All right, Nolan Samron here again. We're out in this property at Brookwood, Alabama. It's just in between Birmingham and Tuscaloosa. I'm here with one of my trusted advisors, Haynes Waldo. He's the guy, the advisor and the agent that brought this opportunity to me and our investors here. And so you can see behind us right now, this is a little, maybe this is 4,000 feet, maybe not even that much. It's on our all of our documents that we'll share with you guys so you can see. But this is a property that one of the tenants has just moved out. There's another tenant in the side lot. But the biggest piece about this that I'm really excited about, as you can see, this is like a 9,600 square foot warehouse. But check out all of the trucks that are way down the way, way down the way. There's 48 acres here. And so I think really where the opportunity lies in here is there's a vacancy there. There's a vacancy on that lot. These guys actually are parking their trucks on there right now, but they're not renting it. It's just happened to be a free location for them. So I think there's some opportunity to value add. Hey, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, pretty neat opportunity. We'll move before we get run over here.
Yeah.
Pretty neat opportunity just with the ample space that this property provides. Like Nolan mentions, with the warehouses that are already on site, we're 5 miles away from the Mercedes United States headquarters, which is killer. A lot of subsidiary companies right here, right down the road. So you'll pull a lot of attraction for these lots and warehouses manufactured that way. And like I said, there's so much room to add, a value add type deals with storage units, more parking. This has ample opportunity to grow. So we're pretty fired up to check this one out.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, guys, you can see that this is not like some Taj Mahal. This isn't like, what they talk about on Bigger Pockets in the forums. This is just like a boring old trucking business. I mean, again, these types of distribution, these blue collar, we were just looking at one of their goals. They're making $150,000 a week in this trucking business. I mean, it's insane the types of income that these businesses are making. And we had the opportunity to be the landlord for these massive distribution companies. And so, again, at the end of the day, these are not going to show up on your on your portfolio. People are going to jump like, oh, you're going to drive down the street and see this awesome high rise and say, I own that. Instead, I'd rather have nobody know, but we own 48 acres over here in Brookwood, Alabama, with this awesome trucking distribution business that is just rocking and rolling, and nobody knows, but the paper's just coming in. It's like pulling a slot machine every single month. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to walk into this side. We're not going to walk in there. The owner of that property asked us not to take any videos inside, but you're going to get a chance to see this property was built in 2020, brand new, everything. So we haven't even walked in ourselves, so I guess you just get to follow along and check it out yourself. Come on. All right. All right, so we're going to walk in here. You're going to check it out, get your eyes on the inside of the space. No kidding. I mean, new roll-up doors looks like. I mean, again, everything's brand new. We're probably 16 feet in the center. You got a laser to shoot that? I mean, probably 16 feet, maybe like 14 feet on the sides.
I bet you're higher than that.
Again, we don't know. I don't know a lot about Dean and Company in this business, but they're these types of buildings are just awesome because they're wide open. If these guys ever were to leave, this would be super easy to lease up because it's not a unique style of building. You've got a property that anybody and their brother can kind of come in and go out of. So,
20.
So that's what I think I'm excited about. So, you want to head this direction? You can see. I mean, there's a little mezzanine in here. Looks like it's conditioned. Again, 9,600 feet. At least 12-foot high roll-up doors.
Yeah, you got a little more room going up than you think. You got 20 feet in the center.
20 feet, yeah. 20 feet in the center, so probably 16 feet on the sides. So at least, 12-foot roll-up doors. 9,600 feet, wide open space, a little mezzanine in the center. Looks like that office is conditioned. So maybe somebody's putting something up there to store. Probably not. It's more just for utilities. But more or less, this is just an open space that I'm sure that they're using the office way more than they're even using this side because they just got a bunch of trucks. So this might be for when they need to have some type of product that needs to be conditioned before they go and ship it out on all their 6 inches. Yeah. So yeah, you can see nothing more, nothing less. But these guys built this space, so can't really see them going anywhere. But if they do, we have an awesome opportunity to release this because there's not a whole lot to do, which is the name of the game.
Mr. Dean or Dean and Company, did they build this building or did the tenant come on site and come? Okay, they built it for him, and I got you.
Sweet. So those guys just going to go drink Mai Tais on the beach, or what's their next step?
He's actually got a business in town that he's going to focus his efforts on.
Okay, good for him.
Trucking business, they recently shut down.
Man, I'll tell you one thing. It looks like I'm in the wrong business. I need to be in the trucking business. Man, they're moving and shaking. Morning. How are you this morning? Awesome. How are you? Doing fine. Just getting our eyes on it. Looks like you guys are staying busy. That's great. Moving, shaking. I'm in the wrong business. I was just saying.
Bathroom?
Yeah, this is great. Ready to rock and roll.
2 bathrooms.
What's your name?
Vaughn.
Vaughn, I'm Nolan. How you doing? It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, we're just getting our eyes on this beautiful space that you guys have.
Okay.
Thank you for having us this morning. All right, let's make a move. Looks good. I want to go check out, the outside here and see. I want to walk at least. You don't have to go all the way down to the
Sloped part.
Yeah, the slope part. But I want to just see how far. Yeah, I can actually see. Yeah, see if we can. Just the value. That's really where the game's going to be here. Is we buy it where it's currently cash flowing. Create some leases that are going to be a little bit longer. And some of the vacant spaces that are out here too, we'll just go find some businesses that are going to want to lease that too. And we'll just increase the value by increasing the cash flow, maybe refinance our equity back out and just keep recycling the same cash. Go forward from here. No, I mean this is a great site. Just the fact that there's so much acreage and half of the site really isn't even rented out. We've got all these tractor trailers like this. And that's kind of the exciting piece is that we can buy this at probably a decent price. You just heard Alan say that right now this tenant doesn't, they might want to knock the price down on the rent, which is one thing, but the biggest key that you have to ask yourself is, where are you going to go? You want to pay less rent somewhere else, go for it. We'll find somebody else that wants to pay the rent, the market rent here with this brand new space. And again, Alan made that move, like, hey, you can have these guys pull right through like that. I thought that's really sharp. I like that. So my biggest thought is that buy the property where the cash flow is right now, and with the opportunity to increase rents by renting the space out that they're essentially keeping for free right there. We've got an entire, looks like, I don't know, 7 to 8 acres of just vacancy right there too. And then there's more acres in the back that we'll be able to lease too. So we can buy it where cash flows now, find a way to go and talk to other businesses that are going to want to increase this or create some vacancy or some occupancy. And then we'll increase the cash flow and find a way to, refinance into new debt later on down the road. So, and one thing that Haynes just mentioned too is that they just got the roof inspected less than 5 years ago. They just pumped the septic tank. I mean, the real estate is in strong standing right now, which is exciting. So you can see this is just the kind of the outside, the roll-up doors here of the building. But I wanted just to show you like just the vastness of this site. I mean, again, we can show you maybe later on when we edit this video, I guess, show you like actually what the site looks like and the actual parcel. You can see how large there is, how there's all this acreage that's being utilized, but there's also probably half of the property is actually not being utilized. Now, maybe there's a little bit of a grade in the slope and it goes down next to one of the creeks over there, but there's opportunity to increase revenue on this site just by speaking with other tractor trailer businesses like this that need locations to park their trucks. I mean, you can see just on this site right here, I mean, this just goes on. I mean, it just goes on. And right now on this side right here, they're essentially putting their trucks on here and they're not even renting it. So there's opportunity to increase rents here. You've got all of this land back there that's not being rented at all, whether it's by them or whether it's by another business. And you've got this entire lot right here that's not being utilized or rented either. So again, as you guys know, with commercial, you can buy these properties based upon the current cash flow. What is the property currently leasing for? And then we buy it at a multiple, which is what the cap rate is. So if we're able to buy this property at the X rent of return or X net operating income, and then we go and even double the rent by leasing a vacant site, leasing this site, and then leasing even back, some dirt back there too. Imagine how much more income we'll create on this, but also that increases the value of the real estate. So at the end of the day, guys, this property is going to produce great income. I don't anticipate these tenants going anywhere. And again, if they do, we'll find somebody else that wants to rent the space. There's a ton of dirt here, and it's right off the highway. Haynes mentioned we're like 5 minutes from the national headquarters of Mercedes. And so there's this huge opportunity where we're right off of the highway, which is another big metric that we try and hit, because the farther that you are of the highway, the less desirable the location is, because we've got to have access for these guys to come in and off the highway. So that's kind of the gist of where this site is and what we're continuing to do. But as we go through, maybe the next part of this video, we'll actually show you the numbers and the metrics and how we're going to work this thing out. And Haynes and I will chop it over lunch. You'll get a chance to hear that dialogue, and we'll see if we can piece something together, make an offer on this bad boy. All right, guys, so the building that we just looked at, I'm going to kind of just underwrite this thing, just kind of off the whim, just show you how that I'm going through things, the math that I'm looking at, seeing the property. Again, this is the listing that I received from Haynes and then Alan, who's the listing agent. And underwriting is not a very difficult thing, but you just have to know what you're looking for in the math and everything. So before I get started, just looking at all the numbers, I've got kind of the lease in front of me. I've got, this is just kind of like a quick one-pager of what the math is on it. I want to give you a quick story on how important it is to not third-party out reading a lease, because there was a time I bought a property a couple of years back, and I bought this building and it was renting out for $13,000 a month. Well, the problem is at the time I thought it was a triple net lease, but what I discovered is the tenant was actually paying like $13,200, and then the landlord at the time was like paying all the expenses. He didn't have a whole, I don't even think he had any debt service on it. So he was paying the expenses out of that gross amount of rent. Well, I had a baby and I was up in the middle of the night, and I thought, what better thing could I do right now instead of reading this 26-page lease? So I started to read through this and started to understand the vocabulary and understanding the sections of this. Well, as I was reading, I discovered that the landlord at the time was paying all the expenses out of that 13 grand. Well, the tenant was responsible for reimbursing the taxes and the insurance, and he wasn't doing that. He wasn't maintaining the building. Well, he was, but at the time it was on, the landlord was the one that was fixing things, not the tenant. And so I actually emailed the tenant the next day and I said, hey man, I'm not gonna ask for a reimbursement, but I am gonna ask, moving forward for you to start paying the taxes and the insurance on this building. You can look in the lease where it says section at, whatever. And he's like, Nolan, you're absolutely right. I do owe you taxes and insurance on this. I hadn't been paying you that. And ever since then, we improved it by increasing the rents over the rent bumps. We renewed the lease. So we, on this one property, before it was gross rent basically of $13,200 to now it's $18,623 a month. And now it's a triple net lease. So that's what I'm receiving, and I'm paying my taxes and insurance out of that amount of money. So really what happened was, because I decided to read through this lease, and I'll explain how important this is and how to look through this. When you read through the lease and you understand the language and the vocabulary, it's gonna help give you more firepower and understanding about your rights as a landlord, the tenant's rights as the tenant, and which each individual or which each entity is responsible for, okay? So as I'm looking at this, again, I'm just gonna go through this, how I would just underwrite this. I've got my calculator. I'm just gonna make sure I look at this. So I'm seeing, number one, the list price on this, which is $2.675 million. That absolutely means nothing to me. I could not care any less what the activity is, what the list price is. It doesn't matter, because as you know, commercial real estate is all based upon its net operating income divided by the market cap rate. That's how you get down to the bottom line of what the actual intrinsic value of this building is worth, okay? So what we did is, I'm looking at this right now. So there's 46 acres or 48 acres on this property. I wanna go over, and when we were speaking with Alan, he has on here 10,041 square feet, but when we spoke with him directly, he was saying there was closer to 9,600 feet. So it would matter if they're only renting the site, but because they're renting all the dirt and they're renting everything out, I like to know what I'm renting per foot, because if I know what the rent per foot is, then I know I'll be able to really dial in what other people are paying around, and I have a much better understanding of what the actual market rent per foot is. So I'll have to go back to Alan and get an actual number and maybe somebody shoot it with a measuring or a laser. Is it really 10,041 feet, or is it 9,600 feet? And another piece that Alan mentioned, in that if you're in development, you'll know that anything, at least in Alabama, that's below 10,000 feet, you do not have to sprinkle it. You don't have to put a sprinkler system in there. So anything above that, though, those sprinkler systems are like $100 grand. So most of these developers, if you're developing some type of industrial site, you want to keep it below 10,000 feet. Therefore, you don't have to go and put an expensive sprinkler system in. So I'm anticipating this being around 9,600 feet or maybe a little bit larger. But again, I don't have a laser. I don't know that answer. So, but right now, this site is this 9,600 feet, we'll just go with that, is being rented for $16,300 a month, okay? So $16,300 a month of total gross income. Now, again, I'm looking at this lease right here, and you can see this is an annual lease. This is a year-to-year lease. It's not even that long. So this tenant at the time has the ability in, I guess, the next 8 months to bail out if they wanted to. But what I'm looking at here is, you can see here in the rent, in the lease that we're talking about, the landlord is owed $16,300 plus utilities. I'm looking here, and I've got this starred from earlier. The taxes, the landlord shall pay taxes or assessments which are levied or charged against the site during the term. So right now, I'm into triple net leases, meaning that the tenant is responsible for all the outgoings. Right now, line number 7 on this lease says that I am the landlord, I'm responsible for the taxes. So that already knocks it from a triple down to a double net lease. And just to be clear, a triple net lease, like I mentioned before, it's the tenant being responsible for the property taxes, the insurance, and the maintenance of the property. So now that I see that the landlord is responsible for the taxes, that means that I'm gonna knock that down from a triple net down to a double net. Then I'm gonna look over here at the conditions of the site. The tenant looks at the site, he's responsible, he's with all faults, he's responsible for everything. So that's why I know that the tenant is responsible for maintaining the site, which is great. And if I keep looking through here, I have to find out where it is. But there's also, here it is, line number 17, insurance. Landlord shall not be held liable for damages or theft, arson, acts of third party, whatever. So I know that the tenant will maintain insurance covering all the tenant's equipment and other personal property, yada, yada. So now I know that it's a true double net lease. So the first thing that I'm thinking about doing is I know that I'm going to get reimbursed for the insurance, and again, there's not really maintenance that I'm being reimbursed for. The tenant is just going to be responsible for that. But the building was actually built in 2020, so it's almost well, there's two sites. The newer building was built in 2020. The other building, I believe, was built in 1989. So, but the roof is a metal roof. I mean, it's probably got another 30 years on it. So that's what I'm responsible for as a landlord, is maintaining a watertight space, keeping the roof intact, and making sure it's dry as a bone in there. So if I know that there's $16,300 of rent coming in, 16,000 multiplied by 12, that means we're having a gross income of $195,600 of gross rent. Now, I know it's a double net lease, so I'm gonna bang out maybe another, let's say, for taxes, I don't have the number on here. I could probably find it. Taxes, actually, it's not as much as I thought. So $4,021. So 4,000. Let's call it 5,000, because I'm gonna round up. And so you see, it's not really that much. That's not even that much more expensive. But we know that because I'm being reimbursed for insurance, our net operating income on this space, 195,600 minus, and that's actually just on one building first. So hang on. So let me just get this on this one building, because there's two buildings that's throwing off rent on this thing. Actually, there's three. There's a third party that doesn't have a lease yet, so I'll explain that. So minus $5,000. So let's say that just on the first site, which is the 9,600 feet plus 20 acres of land that they just rent out because it's like a tractor trailer business. So basically this NOI on the first site is going to be $190,000, $190,600, okay, on the NOI on that. Okay, so now we've discovered the first site. Let's go to the next lease. So, and again, what I'm going to do with these guys, let's say we get under contract, we buy this thing tomorrow. The first order of operation that I'm doing with this is I'm going to extend this lease. I want to switch over the taxes. It's not very much. You're talking about $5,000 extra. So I want to put the taxes on the tenant, and then I also want to lock these in for another 5 years, basically, with 3% rent increases. And that's why in here, most of my leases, not most, every one of them has at least a 3% rental increase, because I want the rent to continue to grow every single year while my debt service or my cost will stay the same. So I'll have like a little bit of a spread each year. But the reason why putting a 3% bump like that is important, because it allows me as a landlord to project out into the future what my cash flow is going to be. But most importantly for my tenant, they're going to realize that, hey, I can predict, or I can, with accuracy and certainty, basically, what my fixed costs are in my business for the next 60 months or the next 5 years, okay? So so that would be my first order of operation, is switching the taxes over to the tenant, and locking these guys in for like 5 years, at least 5 years. So maybe even put an option on them. Okay. Now on the second site, this is a lot smaller. I believe this is, where did that page go? So let me show you guys what we're looking at here, so you can see. So this is the whole site right here. This is the whole site. So what you'll see up here on the top, let me show you here so I can write. This is the first site. That is the 10,000 feet. There's this other site here. So let's just call this like site 1, site 2, site 3, site 4. Okay, so now you can see this. So look, so right now what we were just talking about is this building right here, and they're currently renting out all of this extra land right here just to their trucks. I mean, from the sky photo right here, you can see they're not really utilizing it, but when we were there on Friday, you could tell how many trucks were there. Well, what they've been doing too is the second site, or I guess site 3 right here, is they've been also utilizing this, but they're not paying any rent for that, okay? So this building right here, which we're about to underwrite as well, is currently being rented on one side. There's two separate sides to this, so we could probably add another tenant to it. And they're also utilizing this, but they're not really paying a whole lot of rent. And then this site 4 right here is actually not being, well, no, this one is being utilized right here. Site 4 is being rented out, but it's like a month to month, and I'll explain that in a second. But site 2 is not being rented out at all, and site 4 is being rented out by Mercedes. So let's just do the math on this, just to see what we can come up with. So you can see that this rent right here in the lease, it's almost identical. The taxes, landlord should pay the taxes. We go to 17, where's the insurance? Insurance. I skipped over here. Let's see. Agreement, purpose, term, rent. So this is another 12-month lease, number one. Taxes, delivery, possession, landlord's blah, 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 condition of the site, yada, yada. So I'm not even seeing insurance in here, so we're gonna have to talk about that. But again, this just kind of goes back to what I was talking about before with like reading through the lease. So yeah, right now there doesn't seem to be any agreement on leases or on the insurance. So that's something. So that's great news because that allows me to go back and negotiate something stronger. But let's just say that it's very similar to this first lease where, again, I'm kind of doing this off the fly. But what the actual, let's say that the tenant is responsible for the insurance. So this property is bringing in $2,250 a month. So let's say 2250 times 12. So that's $27,000 a year. And then because the taxes already are on of $5,000, I mean, we can really say just like there's no additional cost to that. So that $27,000 can just be added to our initial net operating income of $190,000. So 190, 600. So that increases our NOI to $217,600, okay? Now, there's a third door here that I think this is what allows Mercedes to be who Mercedes is that they don't even have a lease with these guys. It's just a handshake deal. And I think that they're just so big and bad and powerful that they can dictate terms like that. And that's okay, right? But they're averaging out a certain number per month. So what they do is they go and park their tractor trailers. They park their tractor trailers on this site every month. And what they were doing before is they were charging them like by the truck, by the day. So I think it was like $7 a day per tractor trailer. And I don't know what I do with here it is. So what we have on here, you see again, $2,250. So a total rent of $26,000 for 13,000 or 16,000 plus 2,200 plus the 7,600, a total $26,000. So the way that I'm looking at this, just to be on the same page, I guess that's what they're averaging is $7,600 a month. So, I mean, that's pretty strong. So $7,600. Now, again, I'm just going off of the numbers that I've received from the seller. So if they misrepresent it, that's okay. We can just walk out because they misrepresented the deal. So we'll just underwrite the deal as if Mercedes is paying $7,600 a month, okay? So again, $7,600 a month multiplied by 12 is $91,000. And again, we've already, they've written dirt, which is pretty awesome. So there's really not a whole lot more costs that are associated with. So $91,000, so the NOI is increased by 91,200 plus 217,600. So that gets our NOI to $308,800. That's where I'm kind of seeing the math right now. Okay. So here's where this can get really cool. So like I mentioned before, on this site right here, these guys are already rented out for $16,000 a month, and they're only rented this side, but they're parking their trucks on this side as well. So my thought is if I know that, so let's do the math real quick. So if there's $16,000 of income coming in, this is broken down actually. They actually show how they break the rent down. So look at this. So if you see this, what you'll see is they rent the parking lot for $8,500, the office and the furniture for $1,200, and the warehouse and the maintenance shop for $6,600 a month, okay? So let's break this down in regards to total rent, okay? So $16,300. So what is this what is the percentage of rent per spot. That way what we're gonna do is gonna allow us to get a much better understanding of how valuable the dirt is to rent out to the other potential tenants, okay? So if we take 8,500, we divide it by 16,300, that's gonna be 52%, okay? So that's 52%. Let's say 1,200 divided by 16,300, that equals 7% basically. And then 6,600 divided by 16,300, that's gonna be 40%. Okay, so now that we know that, now again, I'm not an expert, I'm not gonna draw this up and laser this, but you can see how big this site is, right? And that's what they're currently rented for, 8,500 bucks, okay? So these guys right here are literally just renting this building for 2,200 bucks. So this entire site is available to be leased. And then again, site 4 right now. So maybe that number does make more sense if they're renting it for 7,600 bucks a month. So maybe this site right here is being rented for 7,600 bucks a month, okay? But site number 2, this doesn't look near as big as this, but let's be conservative and say that maybe we could lease all this extra dirt to another tenant for $5,000, right? So let's just add potential, put some stars by this. Site 2 is $5,000, and that's probably conservative. That's probably a conservative amount because this is rented for 8,500. You can rent this whole other site for $5,000. I think that's pretty fair. And then on this site number 3, all this extra, again, these guys are already just parking their tractors right there already. So what I'm gonna do is I'd go back to these guys and say, hey, you guys are already in this site. Why don't you guys also rent this site? Or most importantly, I'm gonna say to them, if you don't, I'm already got some other tenant that's gonna come and rent it from me, or like from me already, that's lining up for here. So either you rent it from me or you need to park all your stuff over here. So that's how I'm gonna try and bully them. But you can see here, what if I was to rent site number 3 for even $6,000? I mean, this is 8,500. I would, maybe it's another $5,000. Let's say it's 5,000 bucks for that too. So site number 3 is another 5,000. So you're talking about, if that's a total of extra $10,000 a month, which is $120,000, $120,000 a year of basically net income. It's not really, if you think about it, there's no additional charges. There's no more, other than maybe leasing commission when I have to go pay Haynes or the other guy to go lease the space out. But if I know that right now, that my net operating income on this site, let's round down a little bit. And let's say this is 300 down, or 300,000 down. Rounded down. Let's say to $300,000 of net operating income, right? NOI. Look at the opportunity here to increase rents. Let's subtract maybe leasing commission. Leasing, and let's say that's at 4%. What is that? So, in the way the leasing commission works, just to be clear, is let's say that these guys sign up for a 5-year lease, hypothetically. The total rent is $120,000 a year. You multiply the entire amount of the lease, so let's say 120,000 multiplied by 5, that's $600,000. And there's gonna be increases in that, but let's just say it's 650,000. So I'll increase it. Multiply by 0.04. So that leasing commission is 26,000 bucks. You multiply that. So it's the gross amount of the lease multiplied by 0.04. So let's say that leasing commission, so call it 0.05 basically, is what your leasing commission is gonna be. $26,000. So you subtract that just in the first year or two. That's not an annual thing. So I'll pay that out of my pocket, but I know that I have this opportunity to increase the rent from $300,000 up to $420,000 by simply leasing those other 2 sites, okay? So there's an opportunity, so this is where the opportunity lies, is in this extra $120,000 of net operating income, okay? So now we can increase the cash flow on this property. Now this is just the underwriting of the deal, okay? Next, what I want to do is I want to do the math on what I think the value of the real estate is. I've already put an offer in on this property for $2 million. I think it's a pretty aggressive offer. I doubt that they take it because I'm asking them to leave money in the deal, and I'll explain that. But depends upon the guy's motivation. How, What's he gonna do with the cash? Is he gonna go take it somewhere else, or is he gonna 1031 it, right? There's a lot of options. But sometimes, depending upon the seller's motivation, you can have these guys leave money in the deal. But what I did is I offered him $2 million, the bank to write him a check for $1.5 million at closing, and then for him to leave $500,000 in this deal, or finance me the down payment. So that way I can be in this property for no money. And of course, I'll pay him an interest rate. There'll be a 5-year balloon on it. I'll pay him out that remaining $500,000 after we go and increase this rent, like what we consider potentially to do. And then we'll still own this building with basically no money down. And then not to mention all the depreciation deductions that come along with it too. So from here, let's just do like kind of some math on the actual debt service, okay? So let's just say that there is, right now, you know, today is in middle of April 2024, the debt's ballparking around 8%. I like to use I add about 100 basis points to that as what my loan constant is. And basically your loan constant is just your interest plus your principal. So if you know that your interest is at 8% interest, I'm just gonna add another 100 basis points to make it 9%, because that will include my repayment of principal as well. So let's say we amortize it over 20 years, 1.5 million. Let's assume that they take this deal. $1.5 million multiplied by 0.09. My debt service is gonna be $135,000 a year, okay? Again, let's add it, let's go up a little bit. Let's say my debt service is $150,000 a year, okay? So again, right now we're bringing in $300,000 of net operating income, NOI, let's say 150,000 of debt service. That leaves us with 150,000 ballpark. Well, that's not actually accurate, because that leaves us with 150,000 of cash flow, and then let's also subtract out the interest on, let's say this is 0.8 interest only. So let's say he's going to charge, or we negotiate to 8% interest on him financing the down payment. So that's going to be $40,000 on, let's say, second mortgage. Okay, so that's going to equate out to 110,000 of net cash flow. So $110,000 in net cash flow. So let me walk you guys through how I got to this again. This is from how we got all to here. $300,000 in net operating income. You can see it's a little bit higher, but I want to be conservative, so I rounded down to $300,000 a year. So this is an opportunity by leasing these other two sites at $5,000 a pop to be $10,000 extra a month, potentially an extra $120,000 a year of net operating income. But we're not there yet. We're just with the 300 grand. So then $300,000 of NOI, we subtract our debt service of $150,000, and how we got to that was taking $1.5 million of what we borrow from the bank. We're gonna use a loan constant amount, which I just basically rounded up to about 10%. That's about where debt is today. So let's say our debt service is $150,000 of debt service. That leaves cash flow of $150,000, but then we also subtract our second mortgage, which again, the guy financed us the down payment. And let's say that's $500,000 at 8%. That's $40,000 of interest to the seller. And you subtract that 40 grand. So we are left with $110,000 of net cash flow on this property. I won't even get into the details of depreciation because that's a whole other song and dance. But again, at the end of the day, these are the types of deals that we're trying to purchase and the way that we're underwriting these properties. So again, to totally recap, I think there's some huge value add, because there's 48 acres and they only rent out like 20 acres of it. So there's some huge opportunity to maybe even you're talking about, there's half of this is wooded area. Why would I not go try and rent this out to some hunting club? I don't know, I'm not a hunt guy, but potentially somebody might be interested in that. But there's these other two sites that are not currently being rented, so we can increase the rents on that. Again, if the guy's willing to be, if he's motivated enough and he wants to leave money in the deal for tax purposes, it could be a huge opportunity. But most importantly, we need to increase the rents by 3% each year. We need to lock these guys into a long-term lease, because I don't want them to get cold feet and move. I don't think I'll have the opportunity to, get Mercedes to sign a lease, but I'm gonna try. And not to mention too, there's in the other side of the property where that was smaller, that was 2,500 feet, they're renting it for $2,500 a month. There's 2 offices in there that could potentially be rented. So there's a lot of huge upside because of the vacancies on this site. And so that's what makes commercial so great, is it's not like residential, where if you buy a property for 200 grand and all the houses around are going for 200 grand, it's hard to increase that value of that house to 300,000. It's almost impossible because the comps in the area are what's valuing intrinsically about that residential property. But in commercial, like what we're showing you right here, the value is the ability to buy either something vacant, develop, or kind of have some type of creativity, again, with the lease, the increases in the rents, renting out adjacent sites that are not currently rented, and increasing the net operating income, because what we can do is truly increase the value of this property. So I'll show you one more metric and we can get out of here. But remember that the value of commercial is equal to the NOI divided by the cap rate, okay? So again, if right now the value of this property is throwing off $300,000, 300 grand, we divide that by 0.1. Let's say it's a market cap rate of 1% or of 10%. So let's say that's $3 million. All right, let's do this one more time. So 300 grand divided by 0.1 is equal to $3 million, okay? Let's say that we go and increase the rents by $120,000 to a total of $420,000, okay? Divided by 0.1, we just increased the value of this building by $1.2 million just by renting the space out. And my cost on that to earn $1.2 million was $26,000 in leasing commission. Pretty good return on investment in my book. So again, guys, this is just kind of what we do every day. I love doing this. I love underwriting real estate because if you know how to do this, you can find ways to like squeeze serious juice out of deals. And it can allow you to truly, I mean, you saw $3 million worth of value. I mean, what if we bought this thing at $2 million and the guy left money in the deal? We just we bought something for $2 million and then we increased the value to $4.2 million. You just double the value of the building basically overnight. And that candidly makes me a millionaire in one deal. So it's not impossible, guys. You can do this too. And we'd love to partner with you and teach you how to do the same thing. So if you have interest to learn how to underwrite deals identical to this, understanding what a lease looks like, how to read through this, understanding the vocabulary, or you have interest in doing a deal and partnering and buying a property like this and being a limited partner and getting action in this and bring equity to a deal, we have an old thing called our network of champions, which you can become a limited partner on that too. So we're just trying to bring value to everybody that has interest in commercial real estate, how they can truly become a millionaire with one deal. You just saw it. So if you have interest to learn more about this and how to underwrite property and potentially buy $1 million buildings like this, give us a follow, click the link in this bio, and we can't wait to see you on the other side. Talk soon.